Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. Today we are shipping up and shipping out. We're talking about boats. Technically, if I wanted to be a little bit more accurate in my language, we're talking about watercraft, because some of these things are certainly not ships and definitely not boats either. We're talking about watercraft, particularly watercraft that is easy to acquire, transport, and use. Easy to acquire, transport, and use. So we're not talking about big money, nor are we talking about big. We're talking about stuff that you could probably even use, even if you just have a sedan. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do, but even if you have a very small mode of transportation from your home to the water, this is something you could either definitely or probably acquire and get there, get into, and get places where you're going to have more opportunities for more fish. So that is what we're going to discuss today. Now, I love big, fast, feature-filled boats, whether they be skiffs, whether they be bass boats, or even something like a nice drift boat. I've had some of my best fishing days have been in drift boats that navigate large rivers super well, and I'm incredibly impressed by the oarsmen who can use those on some of these rapid rivers. But what we're talking about today is things, like I said, that are easy to acquire and transport and use. So we're actually going to start with the most modest example and go up both in size and in cost, as is often the case. And I'm sure I'll leave a few things out, but I'm going to hit the high points. And the first one is the belly boat, which is the cute little name for the inner tube. The inner tube that has some bells and whistles. So if you are unfamiliar with these, because I feel like they have kind of fallen out of fashion, but I know they kind of come and go, and everything is cyclical. But the belly boat comes in two basic shapes. There is the circle and there is the U shape. And both of them utilize the design of having some sort of seat suspended underneath them, so that when you get in the water in them, your rear end and the bottom of your thighs is on the seat in the water, and then your knees and your calves and feet are in the water, and then you use flippers to propel yourself. I know there's probably some that have a couple more features, but that's effectively what it is. My preference of the two shapes is not the circle, but it's the U shape. And one, I don't think that it is necessary to have that extra flotation of that circle in front of you. Two, I like to be able to see what's in front of me, and whether I'm walking in one or I am kicking around the pond in one, I like to be able to see what's in front of me. Three, it's easier to land fish if you are have that open place in front of you, but you also have, most of them have an option of having some sort of platform, whether it be a mesh tray or even a harder tray that you can fold over in front of where you are sitting. But then along with that, there's usually a backrest so that you can lean back. There are accessory pouches and gear storage on either side. But they're pretty easy to use. The hardest thing about these things is actually getting them into the water. And usually you have to wear them, walk into the water. Like a lot of times it's you walk backwards until you are deep enough that the flotation kicks in, and then you kick up with your feet, and then you kind of kick around the water. But you're walking usually in those fins, and that's what makes it difficult. At the same time, this is probably the easiest watercraft to take into the woods. So if you have to hiking with a smaller belly boat, flipped around, put on your back like a backpack, is relatively easy. It's never going to be super comfortable, but it's a lot more comfortable than trying to haul a canoe a couple miles into the woods. It's even more comfortable and more easy than pulling a kayak that has a little kayak wheel situation into the woods. Those things aren't impossible, but hauling an inner tube can be even easier. And if you really want to make it easier, you can just get a very large storage backpack, have it deflated, and then have a simple foot pump that you throw in that backpack also. And at that point, all you got is a really bulky backpack, probably about the same amount that you would be carrying if you're going on like a multi-day backpacking trek. So if you have a comfortable backpack, then you can throw that in there with all your fishing gear, strap your rod on the side, and you're good to go. So it is a very easy to use flotation option and watercraft. This is a great way to get out and like high mountain lakes. I'm even thinking of a couple of lakes that I fish here in New Hampshire where it's only like 2 miles up, but because the banks are so thickly settled with pine trees, it is virtually impossible to wade them certain times of the year and make good casts, and then other times of the year it's just absolutely too cold. And the burden of carrying waders up there, you might as well carry waders as well as a belly boat. And I guess that's the other thing that's worth mentioning. If your butt and your knees and your legs and your feet are in the water, this is where you can wear waders too. And this is where having like boot foot insulated waders is even better than using traditional fly fishing waders to keep you warm as you're kicking around and sitting in that water. But in the summertime, of course, fishing for bass or fishing for trout in nice weather, then you're more than welcome to do it in your swimsuit. Please at least have a swimsuit on. But these are a good option. Retail, probably off-brand ones you can get for right around $100, but the ones from the more reputable brands that have some multi-walled bladder protection for the tubes themselves, they're going to be $300 to $400. But they are a great option for, again, places that have very difficult access, places that are far away from the roads, or if you just want something simple to kind of move around where you're fishing. You're also very unobtrusive. That most of the watercraft, you are so much less obtrusive paddling or kicking around than you are wading around. It's just because it's a more natural thing. I don't know if fish think you're just a big goose or what, but it's amazing how much closer you can get to fish in watercraft compared to when you are wading or even walking the bank. You don't look as predatorial, apparently. So belly boats are the first thing that we're going to talk about. The next thing is going to be small pontoon style rafts. So there are small and there are large ones. The large ones are the ones that you've probably seen a lot of social media and magazine and sidebar ads for, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But there's smaller ones which are effectively two pontoons that can be anywhere between like 6 and 8 feet long, and then they have a frame that go on top of them, and then a seat. So it's effectively like a belly boat with a seat. These you can do a couple things. You can use fins. You can use oars. I've even seen some where you can attach a little trolling motor to them. Again, these are becoming less and less prevalent, at least in my experience. And I think it has to do with the fact that the small inflatable rafts are becoming more accessible. And I think there's actually some practical reasons for it as well. So I owned one of these a long time ago. It was when I was in college, and I used it both on big rivers in the Mid-Atlantic and on bigger lakes down south. And it was very nice to be able to be dry compared to using a belly boat inner tube. It was nice to be up off the water. The issue with it is that it was such a small footprint in the water that for me, being not super duper heavy, I spun around a lot when I cast. And I think going back to the belly boat, one of the nice things about that is that you're able to, with your feet, be gently moving them. So as you cast, as you drift around, you can kind of do the job of a correcting trolling motor and keep yourself oriented properly. With these small pontoon rafts, I didn't have that experience. It was nice. They broke down small. They kept you, again, very, very dry. But they were so buoyant that they had the tendency to spin. But at the same time, they weren't super fast. So not my favorite option, but it's definitely an option worth exploring, and it's something that there are companies that are still making them out there. But they break down, they fit in the trunk. I mean, I had a Saturn coupe when I owned mine, and it fit in the trunk, every piece of it. But then again, of course, you go again to now the the bigger rafts. Now, in some ways, these are much more deluxe than kayaks and canoes and things like that. But they are in line with the inflatable series of watercraft. Now, these can start around $800-900, and they can go upwards of $4,000-6,000. So you're into buying a real boat territory here. But they're very, very light, and the builds of them have gotten to the point where they're virtually bulletproof. So you're not taking out an inflatable pool raft with a seat on it. This is an incredibly durable nylon reinforced raft system that has some sort of metal cage as the skeleton, with either 1, 2, or even 3 seats, places for rod holders, places for oars, places for your cooler, very, very important, places for a small trolling motor. I'm sure there's some out there that even have places for outboard motors. And so the nice thing about this is, well, there's a number of nice things about them. One, you can find something that's going to fit your water, fit your budget, and fit your vehicle. So some of the smaller ones can absolutely be thrown on top of a car. I've seen them on top of sedans. I've seen them kind of sticking out of the back of a pickup truck, and they work great when they're fully assembled. But they're also great because when they are broken down, all of those metal skeleton pieces can kind of come apart, and they take up not a lot of space at all. The inflatable itself, when it is deflated, can be rolled up and can be stored somewhere. And so, although it's nice to roll up to the boat launch, or even with these, you can really kind of drop them in just on the side of the road and have it all set to go. If for some reason you're going to be putting a lot of highway miles in, and it's going to have to be sticking out of the bed of your truck or having to be mounted on top of your vehicle, you could, in theory, throw it, not in theory, you can legitimately throw it piece by piece inside of your vehicle, get there, reassemble it. If you have a battery operated or car operated pump, then you can pump the inflatable up again real fast. And then a lot of times it's as simple as snapping those skeleton parts together, attaching them to the inflatable, putting all your accessories where they go, and you're good to go. So it's really a great option for somebody who might want a more fully featured boat, but doesn't want to commit to having a boat in their driveway, doesn't want to commit to buying a trailer on top of also buying a boat, and maybe who just wants the flexibility of something that is going to, in all reality, work better on still water than only on moving water. And this style of watercraft works well in both still and on moving water. And in some senses, it excels on slow moving water and even on still water. So that is a great option. Again, these are going to be probably the most expensive option that I bring up today, because, like I said, upwards of $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 and more if you just keep adding bells and whistles. But these are boats that I've fished out of when I've gone on guided trips, and I haven't felt like I was getting some second class watercraft. They're very, very seaworthy. They don't draft a whole lot of water. They have places you can move around in them in ways that you can't in a lot of other watercraft. But again, the nicest ones do come with a price tag. But that is, again, a great option for somebody who doesn't want to buy a trailer, who doesn't want to take up a lot of space. I mean, say you're in the city, and you can throw it maybe in storage in your basement or in your attic or something like that, or even just keep most of the chunks of it in the parts in the back of your car. Then now you have a full featured boat that you can use without having to have all the other stuff. So I've kind of gone from the cheapest to the most expensive very, very quickly. Well, I want to back up now and talk about some other things that are worth thinking about. Now, I've never done stand-up paddleboarding. Never. I've heard good things about it. I see people fishing that way. I think now you're starting to get into interesting ways. I've seen people, up here there's this pumpkin race where people carve out pumpkins. I'm sure you could fish out of that too. Now, I'm not putting stand-up paddleboards and hollowed out pumpkins in the same category, but it's just not a traditional watercraft. Can you use it? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you enjoy that, then by all means, integrate your fly fishing into it. I just can't speak from experience when it comes to that. So we'll go to the most common category of watercraft that is very easily accessible, because you can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Tractor Supply, you can absolutely get them on a Facebook Marketplace, and that is kayaks and canoes. And we could certainly spend an entire podcast episode just on kayaks. We could spend an entire episode just on canoes. But real quick, I wanted to give the kind of pros and cons of kayaks and canoes, and we'll go from there. So one is, again, if the point of this podcast is talking about things that are easy to get, easy to transport, easy to use, then kayaks are, again, very easy to get. You drive by any big box store, Dick's Sporting Goods, wherever, and they're going to have a dozen of them out there. Bass Pro Shop, Cabela's, you name it. You're able to get into them for $250 to, you can go sky high with the price of kayak. But the kayak that is my wife's, that she graciously lets me use, and I probably end up using it more than she does. I think it was a sale at Dick's. It's a great name brand kayak, but it was less than $300. And it's a single person kayak, very easy to maneuver. Use it for fishing, use it for just paddling, use it for duck hunting. And it's a great, quick way to get around in the water. I will say, though, because it is so small single person sit inside kayak, as I cast, especially if I'm hauling big time on the salt, or if I'm chasing a bigger warm water species and I'm really having to put a lot of oomph into my cast, I do spin a little bit. And you're also kind of limited in a sit inside kayak in how much you can turn and how much maneuverability as you are inside the boat. It's a great craft for getting around, but you also, when you have a smaller kayak, you don't have an opportunity to have a place to put your paddle or your oars. You don't have a place to easily put an anchor. You don't have as much storage. So your speed and your versatility, because this thing, I mean, I can lift with one hand. I can carry it around on my shoulder, no problem. But you limit the things you can take, and you limit the stability of it as well. And so, but that's a single person sit inside a kayak. I've caught tons of fish on a single person sit on top kayak, ocean kayak, on still water. I've never taken one out on a lot of moving water, but that's a great, easy option. You can maneuver around easily. That is, in warm water months, one of my favorite crafts to fish on is a sit on top kayak, where I will kick my legs over the sides, essentially straddle the thing, and kind of use my feet to kick and keep myself oriented how I want to be oriented. And I can also move really, really silently when I do that. And so I don't need to throw my paddle in the water and then pull it up and bang it on the hull of the kayak as I'm putting it back inside. But you can also, of course, fish out of much larger kayaks, two persons, even larger. Ocean kayaks. There's so many options that are out there. There's even those teeny tiny little kind of speed oriented ones. But the kayaks that are built for fishing really do give you some of the features that you're looking for, both storage for rods, anchors, and other gear. And they're also going to have a broader profile. So they're not going to be built for speed. They're going to be built for stability, both as you are paddling and as you are casting and fishing. So they will orient a little bit more true. Does that mean you can't just get a generic kayak for paddling and get out there and catch all sorts of fish? No, you absolutely can do that. Now, as I talk about kayaks, it's worth mentioning there are kayaks that have all sorts of other systems, like little, foot pedals that can kick you around the water, trolling motors. I was talking to a rep from one of the big kayak and canoe companies, and he was talking about the trolling motor and GPS system that they have, and how he's able to go sit in the surf, program it to keep him where he wants him to be, and he just paddles out there, hits a button, and he can fish in that one spot, even though he's in the ocean tide. This is a kayak, and this is all said and done under $4,000, and you have something that can do that for you. I mean, that's pretty amazing, and very, very versatile. Freshwater, saltwater, and the kayaks are not heavy at all. You have the right set of blocks or the right roof rack and the right tie downs, and that thing is going on top of your car, no problem, even if you just have a little sedan. And then, of course, there's canoes. And if I'm going to be honest, out of everything I've mentioned, the one that I have owned that I enjoy the most to fish out of is a canoe. And it's the canoe I have right now. And it's a Old Town Discovery, which is a wide canoe. So it is not the fastest watercraft out there. As my friend and I were commenting as we were paddling to our duck blind in the moonlight a couple of weeks ago. It's not fast, but it is easy to use. It is very, very steady. It is very true in its orientation. And again, I'm not saying you have to get the Old Town Discovery, whatever length I have, but compared to a narrow canoe, which is probably better for maneuvering and speed and getting yourself across the lake quickly, this wider body canoe is awesome because there's so much stability. And for me, for fishing with kids, which I'm often doing in the canoe, they can slide on one side of the seat to the other side, no problem. They can get down, they can kind of lean against the gun wall, they can do all sorts of things, and I'm not going to lose my stability. This canoe and other wider canoes I've been in are so stable that with some safety and some care, I'm able to stand up and basically pull as opposed to row. This canoe actually has attachments where I can put on, I'm totally drawing a blank, but oar locks, there you go, and paddle it kind of like a poor man's drift boat. So you get a lot of benefits of stability, of carrying the right amount of water, of being able to have storage. Of course, the biggest drawback is it's not light at all. Can I lift it by myself? Yes. I'm not the strongest guy in the world, but I'm also probably on a certain side of the bell curve when it comes to being able to lift things. So I understand that's not going to be something that everyone's going to want to do. And then it's not so much just about lifting it, it's getting it up on your car and getting it off of your car. That's going to be a part of the decision-making process as well. But it's a great option. And again, cost there, you can get into canoes for under $1,000, but you can go well over $2,000 and even $3,000 if you start adding on lots and lots of features. But it's a reliable thing that has a lot of versatility in ways that I would say the smaller craft don't. No one's going to go out and belly boat for fun, but you're going to canoe for fun, and you're going to find ways to use that. Well, quick jaunt through those types of watercraft: the belly boat, the small pontoon, the inflatable raft, the kayak, and the canoe. And I threw a little bit of shade at stand-up paddle boards, but again, I've never tried the thing, so I can't complain too much. But all are worth exploring, and all will work if you have a smaller vehicle. They're easy to acquire, easy to transport, and easy to use. And ultimately, they can get you to more places or get you to more places quickly. I didn't really spend a lot of time talking about that, but I think you can appreciate that even if it means just accessing the bank from the middle, as that's what we all do. You know, when we're fishing from the shore, we're casting in the middle. When we're fishing on a watercraft, we are casting to the shore, and that's because that's where the fish are. But it is easier to cast to the shore from the middle than it is to cast to the shore from the shore a lot of times. But it gives you the ability to move around unimpeded as you are fishing anywhere you want to fish, and of course access places more quickly and access places that you wouldn't be able to necessarily access if you were on foot. A lot more we could say about that. Definitely check out castingacross.com. I do go into more details on some of those watercraft that I have mentioned today, how I use them to fish, and some pros and cons of them as well. And if you have questions about anything, I mean, there's a good chance that I've fished out of it or owned it, and I'd be more than happy to give you my feedback on anything in particular. Matthew at castingacross.com. This week on the website, the first article is called Game of Inches, 4 Areas for Fly Rod Grip. This is going to be a podcast in the next few weeks because, first of all, a lot of people read it, and so I know that's interesting to them, or at least it sounded interesting to them. But there's a lot of elaboration I want to go into, and this all comes down to controlling your wrist as you are fishing. We've all seen people flail around, and that person may be me and you, flail around because they overextend their wrist and they're forward and backward cast. And so that's where you get the water splashing down in front and behind. It's where you get that snap. There's so many things that go wrong, but that's just one example. You can cast really, really well and still have issues with wrist control. So I give 4 examples of wrist control, not just for casting, but other aspects of fishing in this article. But like I said, I would stay tuned. I imagine it's going to be the subject of a podcast in the very near future. Wednesday's article is called Rusty Flybacks Election 2024. I feel like there should be a pounding, synthesizer sound when I say that. So this is being recorded after the election. Guess what? World's still here. Whether you're happy or sad, world's pretty much the same. And you could say, oh no, well, you take your emotions out of it, and the world's pretty much the same. And here we go. There are bigger things in this world. If your hope depends on the candidate that got in, if your hope depends on the candidate that didn't get in, I would say you need to reassess things. I'm not saying it's not important. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying you need to reassess things. And so in this article, which is a compilation piece of 3 different articles, I share some thoughts that kind of run parallel to what I just shared a moment ago, that our hope should be in things much, much greater. And then also appreciate the things that are much, much smaller. For example, a rising trout. So you can read that article over at castingacross.com. This week's recommendation on the podcast a few weeks ago, following the passing of John Gierach, I recommended, hey, go read a John Gierach book. And so I took my own advice, and I am almost done rereading, this time via audiobook, so listening to Trout Bum. And it's a lot of fun. And I'll probably review it more fully later, but the one thing that I want to take away from it, and I alluded to this when I wrote about Gierach a few weeks ago, I feel like he was cutely cantankerous in these early books. I think it became a little bit more, I don't know, outspoken about it in later books. He's also a lot less PC in these early books, which is fun, and I don't think it's offensive. I don't think it's wrong. I think it's just a little bit more fun, a little more genuine, not being throttled by something. Now, again, someone can change, of course, after 40 years of writing, but I really enjoyed Trout Bum, which is one of his first books on fly fishing. So you can check that out, read it. I'm sure it's at the library, but as I often say, a lot of these books you can get for free on audiobook through your library. And so if you're driving around, you're mowing the lawn, after you're done listening to Casting Across, then check out Trout Bum by John Gierach. I'll put a link to that book, whether it be an audiobook or the hard copy, or on the show notes of this podcast page over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.